So welcome everybody to the Golden Grove Virtual Field Day. This is part of the digital remote monitoring to improve horticulture's environmental performance project. It's a smart farming partnership project funded by Hort Innovations Research and Development Levies and the Australian Government's National Landcare Fund. The project actually spans several industries. And there are several partners involved in this project, primary partners being Applied Horticultural Research and Hitachi Vantara. Now, we actually do have several presenters who will be presenting today. And we also have a couple of, so we have Henry and Liam from Applied Horticultural Research who will be presenting, who will be presenting an overview of smart farming technologies in the project in total. We will have Alan Thompson from Hitachi, who's going to give us an overview of the Hitachi control tower. Then we'll have a brief video looking at Golden Grove, produced by AHR, and then Wayne himself will be coming online, and we'll have a bit of a virtual walkthrough video that Wayne and I will talk you through. And then after that, Celeste Cook from GIA will be giving us an overview of some of the best management practices and the nursery accreditation programs that have actually helped Wayne to manage a successful business. And we'll also have Andrew Chamberlain from Queensland Farmers Federation. He's going to give us an overview or discuss a couple of projects that he's been working on, looking at smart technologies and how they can help to reduce energy costs. So there will be a brief time after each presentation to answer one or two questions, but there will be a general discussion and question period at the end that if we don't get to any questions or you have any questions afterwards, then we can have a brief discussion there and then. If you do have any questions, please use the chat function in the Teams app, and one of us will actually respond to you as soon as we can. So, without further ado, I will hand you over to Henry and Liam, and they can do their presentation. So, Henry and Liam, it is all yours.
Thanks for the introduction, David. Just going to share my screen. Are you able to see that screen, David?
Yes, we are. Yes, we can.
Thanks for the introduction. My name's Henry Hyde, and I'm joined by Liam Southern-Rogers from Applied Horticultural Research. And we're going to be providing a bit of an overview and introduction to the smart farming project, covering some of the other pilot farms before diving into the Golden Grove Smart Production Nursery in more detail. So just a bit of an overview of what's happened so far in the project and what it's all about. The Golden Grove Smart Production Nursery is a pilot smart production nursery as part of the project Digital Remote Monitoring to Improve Horticulture's Environmental Performance. And as part of this project, a remote monitoring control tower has been built by Hitachi Vantara with input from Applied Horticultural Research and GIA. And this control tower is designed to integrate sensor data from around the property and provide useful outputs to the grower. And this is done through integrating different types of sensors which measure productivity and environmental performance data. One of the main outcomes of the project is the automation of compliance forms such as Fresh Care Environmental and EcoHort. And these forms have been designed to be automatically filled using the sensor data collected as part of the project. So as part of this project, 4 pilot farms have been set up around Queensland. So obviously the focus of today's presentation is the Golden Grove Smart Production Nursery in Torbanley. However, we've also set up 2 pilot farms in Bundaberg, and these are a vegetable pilot farm and an avocado pilot farm. as well as a banana pilot farm in far north Queensland. And I'm just going to give a very brief overview of some of the technology on the other pilot farms before we go into more depth on the Golden Grove Smart Production Nursery. And I must add, the reason the focus has been on Queensland so far is due to the sensitivity of the Great Barrier Reef, and all of these farms are in Great Barrier Reef catchments. So the goal has been to improve environmental performance through digital remote monitoring. So what does a smart production nursery look like? On Wayne's property, we've installed a range of soil moisture and potting media moisture probes, and these allow Wayne to remotely monitor the moisture content of his pots from a central location. On the banana pilot farm, we've introduced some activity tracking and automated record keeping, and this allows activities to be remotely monitored and for forms such as EcoHort or Fresh Care to be automatically populated. So specifically on the Golden Grove pilot nursery, we've enabled the automation of some of the EcoHort records through monitoring wastewater. We've installed some dendrometers on the smart production nursery, and these are sensors that remotely monitor plant stress and provide the data back to the central control tower. An on-farm weather station has been installed to provide location-specific weather information. And we've also been performing some nutrient loss monitoring using a portable photometer. Now, my colleague Liam is going to go into more detail on all these technologies, but it's worth pointing out that no two smart production nurseries or smart pilot farms will look the same, as the needs of the grower and the location of the property are obviously going to dictate which sensors are a higher priority. Now, before we go into more detail on the smart production nursery, I thought I would just highlight a key technology from two of the other pilot farms. For example, on the banana pilot farm, we've installed a real-time nitrate photometer, and this photometer is acting as a case study for the banana industry, where fertilizer is becoming more heavily regulated. And the photometer has been installed to measure real-time nitrate leaching from the subsurface of one of the banana blocks. And this has allowed us to verify that the grower is performing best practice, and has also provided data for us to inform a nutrient loss model. Now, it's worth pointing out that this sensor is quite an expensive piece of equipment, but it's acted as a very useful data source for the industry. At the avocado pilot farm, we've installed some sap flow meters. Now, these sap flow meters are being used to remotely monitor the flow of sap on some of the avocado trees. And these work by injecting a pulse of heat into the sap wood, and a temperature sensor above and below this heating element allow the flow of sap to be remotely measured. And although these are an experimental sensor, they are providing a unique insight into plant stress by remotely monitoring sap flow. And these could be applicable to nurseries. Now, before I hand over to Liam, here's a map of the Golden Grove Smart Production Nursery, and we've got monitoring stations spread around the site. Over the left of the map, you can see where the farm office is, where the desktop photometer label is. This is where the Hitachi control tower screen is located. And from this point, Wayne is able to monitor all of the different sensors along the property. And on the right of the map, you can see the orange highlighted area. And now these are the blocks where most of our monitoring has been concentrated. So I'm going to hand over to Liam now, who's going to go into more depth on the different sensors installed on the site.
Thank you, Henry. Liam Southern Rogers here from Applied Horticultural Research. So we have a weather station installed at Golden Grove Nursery under the shade cloth, which gives us weather information on the microclimate within the nursery. This is useful because it is different information that is provided by the BOM. It's a local microclimate data set. On the weather station, we're measuring rainfall, wind direction and speed, humidity, air temperature, and solar radiation. It's quite a useful weather station as it's battery and solar powered, so it's portable. It can be moved around the nursery as necessary. We've got soil moisture probes installed horizontally into the plastic pots at Golden Grove Nursery. These are off-the-shelf soil moisture probes that we've used in Wayne's Koya potting media, and they've been working very well. The benefits of moisture probes are that you can optimize the irrigation management, therefore reduce the volume of leachate, reduce the labor requirements, so you can automatically, I should say, measure moisture from your computer, and you can provide automatic alerts to yourself. So if the moisture is becoming too dry or if it's too wet, you can be notified of that. We've tried installing 3 soil moisture probes into one pot, just to test out how that would work. But we found that's probably too many. You'd be better off using 2 soil moisture probes in a plastic pot. They can interfere with each other, and if you install them too low in the pot, you're not getting a good representative sample of the potting media. So we'd recommend installing 2 moisture probes into a pot. That is plenty. We've also looked at pot leachate volume and a weight-based irrigation management system. So with this setup, we're measuring the weight of 6 pots, and from that determining how much moisture is in the pot. And so this is particularly useful if you're using different potting media blends where soil moisture probes may not work effectively. It's also a way to test that your soil moisture probes are working properly because the weight of water is a very accurate measurement. We're also measuring the volume of leachate through the pot using a rain gauge installed under the pots. So we can use this to target a leachate fraction of around 12%. So we expect that 12% of the applied irrigation would leach through the pot, which is a good target that we're using at Golden Grove Nursery. But combining all these different sensor types, we can get a very accurate understanding of irrigation management and how we should be irrigating according to the pot moisture and weather conditions. We can collect samples from the bottom of these systems to manually analyze the samples for nitrate and phosphorus. We've installed a stem dendrometer at Golden Grove Nursery. So this unit measures the stem expansion and contraction over time. It is very, very accurate. So you can measure the expansion and contraction over a day-night cycle. And from this, you can detect when your plant may be in stress. So it either may be waterlogged, too dry, or potentially a lack of nutrients. So you can use this sensor to track your growth over days, months, or weeks, and look for changes in patterns over short periods of time, such as 2 or 3 days. We've used these sensors at the other sites as well, and they've been very successful. And they complement the soil moisture sensors very well because you can have multiple types of sensors telling you similar information, such as the soil or the potting media is too dry. We've installed a residual-free chlorine system at Golden Grove Nursery. This is more of an experimental system, but importantly, this is capturing a sample from the chlorination system and holding it in a cistern and measuring that over a 30-minute cycle. And what we're aiming for is to detect or measure a chlorine concentration of about 2 ppm 8 minutes after chlorination, which is a challenging concept. So it automatically collects a sample out of the chlorination system, holds it in a separate container and measures it on a loop for that 30 minutes. And then we're measuring the nitrate concentration, or the chlorine concentration at 8 minutes. This is an example of the data down below. So we can see early on in the chlorination cycle, there's a high residual level of chlorine, but after about 8 minutes, it's decayed down to our target level of about 2 ppm. This is very useful for reporting to eCohort, as you are required to measure your contact time after 8 minutes. We have a set of pH and EC sensors around Golden Grove Nursery. So we have a set of pH and EC sensors in the dam, measuring the water quality 50 centimetres below the surface. This is very useful to look for changes in water quality over time. We've also got pH and EC sensors measuring leachate directly from the pots. So through the EC measurement particularly, we can detect when there might be a large leaching event of nutrients. So if there's a spike in EC, we can assume a big bunch of nutrients has leached through the pot, and it might be time to apply some more nutrients. We have EC and pH sensors in runoff drains down the side of the nursery. And this is particularly useful for reporting to ecohort and just monitoring environmental performance in general. We're using a desktop photometer to measure water samples for nitrate, phosphorus, and alkalinity. It's a low-cost photometer, so they're about $800, and they're much more accurate than test strips. They're very easy to use. Someone can use it with very little training, and it gives you a reliable output with a number that you can record. It doesn't require a comparison of color to a chart or anything like that. It gives you a number that you can simply record for your records or provide that to ecohort. There's a big range of parameters that these can measure. You just need to buy the correct reagents to test your sample. But it's a very, very useful piece of equipment, and it gives you very reliable results at a low cost. We tested out some pest trap cameras at Golden Grove Nursery. So we're using off-the-shelf, high-quality outdoor cameras, and we're using these cameras to point at pest traps and also to monitor nursery operations. So the benefit of this is we're using the same camera system to measure pest traps as well as nursery operations. You can share these images to your IPM specialist or to any other consultant if you wish, and you can also monitor these images from your office. So it can allow you to pick up pest incursions earlier and to share that information with someone quickly at a high quality. We can detect pests larger than 1 millimeter with this camera. Any pests smaller than that is pretty hard to detect, so you'd have to go out and look in person. Thank you. Thank you particularly to Wayne and Tom for hosting the Smart Farming project, and thank you to David, Barry, and John McDonald from GIA. And any questions for us before we hand over to Alan?
Thanks for that, Liam and Henry. At the moment, we don't have any questions being flagged. So we will move on to Alan, and welcome Alan. Alan is from Hitachi. He's going to give us an overview of the Hitachi control tower. Good morning, Alan. Welcome.
Good morning, David. Thank you. And you can see my my screen.
There you are, Alan. You're up and live.
So the Hitachi control tower, is that what you can see?
Yes.
Not my shopping list or anything else?
No.
Okay. So thank you, David. And look, my presentation really fits on the if we think of it in the context of Henry and Liam have talked about the individual IoT, Internet of Things, sensor pieces. I guess what I want to show is how it comes together in the control tower. Now, the two people who have done most of the work on this, Owen Keats, who is unfortunately unavailable, and Dallas Gibbs, who regrettably was made redundant from the organisation in spite of his great work. So those two, along with Henry and Liam and others, have done the heavy lifting on this. I'm really just showing you how the control tower comes together. Think of the control tower as simply ingesting the sensor data that Henry and Liam have explained to you. And if you can see the dashboard on the top right of the screen, essentially think of it as having three functions. One is to ingest those multiple data sources. Two is to present in a dashboard form, which I guess is easy enough, those data, so you can see them. But I guess the really important part is to run it through different models, to like how leaky from a nitrate leaching perspective, and or decision support tools that then gives the grower prompts to action, and that might be more or less moisture, more or less nutrient, a warning that nutrient is leaking out of the system. So that's the control tower. You're going to see some visuals that are the same as Liam and Henry, although the context is less about the sensor and more about how the data comes together. So the slide should have changed to the map, which you've seen. Is that correct, David?
Yes, Alan. Yeah, we can see the Golden Grove map now.
Okay, thank you. So again, you've seen this from Henry and Liam. The point is really just to look at the top of that, where you've got these 1, 2, 9 different IoTs, if you like. So there's a lot of data, and if for those growers that are on the call, you'll know how the integration of different data sources can be a challenge. So key to this is the interoperability of those different data sources and the connectivity of those different data sources. In terms of the solution, what we've done in this control tower is talked about 6 different modules, if you like. A little like if you were to buy a Windows package, you may never use Excel, but you might always use Word and or other Windows functions. So in terms of this this product, if you like, core to it is productivity. Because as growers, you know, well, one thing is to have a very clear view on what we can do from environmental management, but what drives your business is productivity and therefore profitability. So front and center of this is around maintaining production or increasing it, but with lower inputs. Unless, of course, there's an economic reason to increase those inputs, but rather than guesstimating that, the ingestion of this data allows us to manage that. In terms of BMP compliance, as many of you know, the compliance impost is significant in terms of taking those data from multiple sources if they're paper-based, and then trying to consolidate those into reporting. So a key module is that. On-farm track and trace of assets, particularly on larger properties and probably not so germane to the nursery situation, but on large banana plantations, etc. You've got multiple people on multiple equipment wanting to know where they are, then this has been key to it. As the project's extended, we've looked at supply chain tracking, and again, it would be, in this case, germane to a nursery situation where the product leaves your property, you lose, to a sense, control over it. You want to ensure that the product moves directly to the point of sale, or sorry, to your customer. And if it's in a controlled environment, that controlled environment is maintained. So again, the control tower has the capability to ingest those data from the supply chain, be it temperature, be it geolocation, and certainly time with that. Environmental management and sustainability was the root of the project. And I guess with Wayne and the other project participants, we've been able to dramatically reduce the leakage of nitrate into the environment. And an interesting evolution of this capability and I guess an insight into growers' mentality, which has been very understandable, is a transition from give me the numbers, show me the numbers, alert me if I should do something different, to a point of with some of our hugely valuable proof of concept partners has been, okay, now I trust the system enough to automate it, because I fear that there might be 2 or 3 hours between the alert and me actioning it, and I know that then the system is my production system is suboptimal in that period that I've been unable to action, if that makes sense. So this evolution of trust building in the data, and then this realization that if I automate it, then allow it to automate, so allow it to turn off nutrient, allow it to turn off water, and or the reverse, that's better for my overall operation. So it's been a fascinating journey, I guess, for all parties. So what we've seen from this irrigation management is a decrease in water. Of course, with a decrease of water comes a decrease in energy, and learning about in more detail, because there's more data, the different strategies needed for particular crops. In terms of, particularly on one site, improved water source management, reduced water waste, reduced off-site impacts, and with the better management of water relative to the particular plant species, improve plant health, neither in water deficit or water being overwatered. Along with water use is then the application of nutrients, and so a reduction in often a reduction across the 4 case studies, a reduction in total nutrient use, which is obviously a cost saving, and I guess very importantly, a loss to the system saving in terms of environmental and possible environmental pollution, and reduced plant stress from either the overall application of nitrogen against the plant becoming vegetative rather than reproductive, and or nutrient deficient. Again, you've got a graphic on the bottom right-hand corner. So taking those data that Liam and Henry talked of via the sensors and putting it into something that then can be managed. You've heard Henry and Liam talk of this, so I won't dwell on it. But again, an ingestion point, as is this, an ingestion point. As you heard Liam and Henry talk about the trap data. So again, information being taken into a central point and then us doing something with that. That also includes the dam monitoring, not automated yet, but at least a very visual view of when the dam is reaching fullness. So it comes down again to this dashboard on that graphic on the right, top right. You can see a little bit like a tachometer, I guess, the danger areas, critical danger areas, the sweet spot, and where the system is sitting within that sweet spot, and where it's been near term, and where it's forecast to do. So again, I guess from a grower perspective, growers have to deal with such a huge amount of data and a huge amount of operations that generally in other aspects of business there are multiple people with multiple responsibilities, and so the grower, he or she, is juggling massive amounts of data, and the opportunity to let a 5 or 10% slippage there just because of the sheer massive data is strong. And so the use of a system like this that takes that, if you like, that cognitive load off the grower, so he or she can use their time to make other decisions that are not bogged down on data which can be automated. And again, showing the level of detail, but in fact, again, what the growers have told us is it's good to look at the detail from time to time, but what I want is I want a decision support answer to tell me what's happening and what action I should do. And from a water quality point of view, here are those myriads of data, myriads of reports that are possible, can go into best management practice data, but rather than the grower having to work their way through the data, again, it comes out as a one decision point. And sorry, as I shared before, the ultimate view is when a grower, he or she, is then prepared to trust the system sufficiently that it becomes fully automated. So David, that's it from me in terms of formal presentation. Happy to take questions at whatever time you see as appropriate.
Thanks for that, Alan. We don't seem to have any questions at this stage. No. So thank you for that, Alan. That's a nice little overview. And as I'd just like to point out that as Alan has said, it takes that period of becoming comfortable with the data and becoming comfortable with what the sensors are showing you to build your confidence. So even though the data and and the graphs giving you a real-time demonstration, there is a learning curve that we all have to go through. We're all human, and we have to learn to trust the data. But we'll talk a little bit more about that with Wayne as we go through the walkthrough, because there has been a couple of occasions where Wayne and I have been chatting, and we've seen the data, and we've seen changes in the data, and been trying to relate that back to what process has caused that, or what plant maintenance has caused that to occur. And it is a learning curve. It takes several months for you to fully understand it, and I believe Wayne is still learning, and will continue to learn as he gets more familiar with the data and delves deeper into it. Wayne, are you there? Shall we? What I will do now is I'm going to show a little video produced by Applied Horticulture. Can you hear us, Wayne?
Yes, I can. Yep.
Excellent. Okay. Wayne Parr, everybody from Golden Grove. I'm just going to show the AHR video first. It's a 4-minute clip, just to give an overview of the actual nursery, and then we will start and have a chat. So this is the video from AHR, goes for about 4 minutes.
Improving the productivity and environmental performance of nursery systems using technology, sensors and live data is referred to as smart farming. Information can come from in-field sensors, nursery cameras, on-site weather data and decision support tools such as forecasting models or automated records. The National Landcare Program and Hort Innovation have funded a pilot smart production nursery and are supporting the development of the Hitachi Control Tower, which provides growers with an integrated data platform to farm efficiently and demonstrates environmental best practice to their customers and compliance bodies. Wayne Parr from Golden Grove Wholesale Nursery is piloting a range of smart farming technology across his business.
The biggest labour saving has been in monitoring. We've been monitoring for many years manually, and we do that a couple of times a week, water treatment and so forth. So with the smart farm monitoring, we've been able to reduce that. We've obviously been checking it against the electronic data, but now we've been able to reduce our labour. We recycle a lot of our water, so we're monitoring the recycled water. We also add town water in to blend the water when the dam water gets a little bit high in ECs or high pH. So we're monitoring the water sources, so it's the dam and the town water, and then the sprinklers. And we found through winter months we've been able to reduce our watering by 30%. And we're assessing summer now, coming into summer, how much we can reduce it. But the big savings have been we were over-watering and obviously wasting fertiliser, water and electricity. So we've been able to reduce that vastly. So now we have a better handle on it, and we can water when the plants require it. So the weather station's really good because it's giving us accurate data inside the nursery. We opted to have it inside the nursery because it's a different microclimate under the shade area. So we've got some good data off that, and we have predictions. We're using the predictions definitely. The water that runs off site, we're monitoring that. Obviously, we've got requirements to monitor that. You know, a lot of the reporting is for EcoHort, so now we just have to bring up the dashboard, and the information's there. So the bulk of the information is ready to go. So no, it's been a vast improvement. We're monitoring leachates obviously before, but now we've got live leachates and ECs in the bottom of the pot. So we can tell, you know, if we need to pull the fertiliser back or we need to increase it. And it's because it's live, it gives us a better handle on when to do that, adjust the fertigation accordingly. So yeah, so we got the pest monitoring traps. It's a video camera, and it takes a photo once every 24 hours, and we upload that. We can send that on to an entomologist. So it's been good. It doesn't obviously doesn't show you the small insects like mites and those sort of small insects, micro insects, but certainly the bigger ones like citrus leaf miner and moths and the caterpillar control, and that shows you all that. And the other one is the hydrometer. We've only just installed that. We're looking forward to getting that data. That's going to be very important to see if the trees are in stress. We've got all the other components of monitoring now with moisture and fertiliser and ECs. And the one we didn't have was when the plants are going in and out of stress. So now we'll be able to see that, and we're able to put that into the formula. And obviously, if they're in severe stress like a heat wave, we can give them a light water to reduce that stress. So that's the next stage.
Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to share the other video, and we're going to talk over this. Now, with this one, this is purely just us walking around with the camera, so it's not as clean. There's a little bit of shakiness to it, so anybody who's gets motion sickness might find it a little bit disturbing at certain points. And we are going to basically talk through a lot of what you've already seen and show you those sensors in the field, and then try and give you a little bit more information about the process of using the sensors. So here we are, Golden Grove Nursery. So this is just simply a shot that I took back in October 22 to show you the irrigation system. And you can just see the weather station here off to the side. I'll show that again. But if you note that the irrigation system does not impact or fall into the rain gauge. So that rain gauge is not representing what's actually falling on the nursery or being irrigated. So here we're going to start at the pump shed. Now, we're not going to show you the pump layouts and the filtration systems and all that at this point in time, purely because Wayne is in the process of having that all moved across to a larger shed. How's that going, Wayne?
Yes, we finally got power on, so we're just waiting for the irrigation company now. So we do run a Dream 2 controller and a FERT bench as well. So we've got automation on that area as well.
So the intention here was that the irrigation would be automated with the sensor data feeding in to help to streamline the control of the irrigation. But as you can see on screen here, this is the actual, as you've seen, the free chlorine sensor. Now, the way this works is that when the dam pump is triggered to fill the tank, it triggers a time relay that actually holds off until a set period of time, so all the pipes are full, and then it draws the sample into this little tank here, and then it cycles the water round past the free chlorine sensor, and then after a set period of time, as we've already heard, it will actually take a residual reading and display that on the dashboard or on the control tower. Now, it is a prototype. The technology, this manifold here, that manifold is currently used in a lot of large-scale council and municipal water supply and water treatment systems. But to actually bring it down to this level for the nursery, this is a prototype, and hopefully it will be refined further, and we will eventually have a nice little contained system that nurseries can use. So here we are looking at, and you can see the storage tank at the back. And there's this little blue tank here, Wayne. I can't remember what that one is. That's part of filtration, isn't it?
That's ion filter. We had problems with the recycled or the dam water with high bicarbonates, and we put that system into which lowers the pH and drops the bicarbonates right down. It's a water softener.
Yep. So moving down towards the back of the nursery, and this is one section, one shade house. So we just have a quick look around. You can see that there are, and I apologise for the resolution of this in some cases. I had to reduce the resolution for the transmission. So Wayne, these are obviously citrus trees. How many trees do you actually have on the ground at the moment?
About 240 if she's full at the moment. So 240,000 trees.
Yeah.
We generally do around that 180,000 a year. So these trees are they were due to go out in February, March. We've got stake and tape. We've got a fair bit of work to do to them yet. But they're growing well. They come through winter. We bud them prior to winter, and they're all shooting and going well.
Excellent. So you supply directly to the farmers, don't you?
Yeah, we supply commercial growers. We're an ex-commercial grower ourselves. So in Queensland, we supply commercial growers. We do a lot of PVR varieties as well. So citrus trees takes it takes roughly 12 months from when you graft them or bud them to when the trees are dispatched. Very uneven crop. They're not like other nursery crops, because from the buds they're very spasmodic, I suppose. So we have a sort of 3 different crops in one. So we usually got to size and sort them a bit through the growing cycle.
Okay. So we will see plants at different stages as we go through here. You'll see some that have been touched. But I've just paused on this one because I just wanted to reiterate that the rain gauge here on the weather station, although this is a nice little independent weather station, it's on a tripod, it can be moved anywhere, and it does monitor solar radiation, wind speed, temperature, all that. But the rain gauge is purely there to capture what comes through the shade cloth. So it's not a representation of the area rainfall. It's a representation of what is actually coming through the shade cloth and is hitting the plants. So we know that if there's a 20 mil rain event, that 20 mils may not be reaching the plants. So that's why I've just simply stopped there to have a look at that. You can see there's some older plants. I think this was actually October 22, but here we are again. This was taken about a week ago, and you can see that there's some of these plants. I believe these plants have already been trimmed, have they, Wayne?
Yeah, they're budded in just before Christmas, and they've been topped in spring. So the rootstock's been cut off for the graft to grow away.
So that's what we're coming up to now, I believe, is rootstock that's waiting, is it, Wayne?
Yeah, the rootstock's on the right there, the bigger trees, and that's just where we cut them back after the buds take, and to push the bud through.
Right. So Wayne will chop it back like this and then graft in the variety for the farmers. So now we're heading down to the back of the. Sorry, Wayne.
Sorry, the variety's already grafted, budded on, and we've topped it back, so we pushed the bud away.
Oh,
underneath.
okay. Yep. So there's a lot more steps in it rather than just putting a plant in a pot and watering it.
One of the big things there, David, too, is when you take the top off like that, the plant doesn't use as much water. So it's the monitoring gear's really good at that early stage to the plant where it starts pushing again. You can lose roots, if you overwater it in that critical stage.
And I suppose that's something that we might just mention here is that when the plants have actually been topped and they reduce their water use, this is where having the 2 soil moisture sensors in the pot comes in handy, because it'll actually show the difference in soil moisture from the top of the pot to the bottom of the pot and where the plant is actually drawing the moisture from. But also when they are at a seedling stage and they've only got a very small root system, Wayne can use the soil moisture sensor at the top of the pot to target irrigations for the small root zone. And then as the plant grows, he can then use the 2 soil moisture sensors to actually, so one at the top and one at the bottom, and then he can adjust his irrigation and look at where the moisture's staying and also the nutrients, because Wayne fertigates, where the nutrients are staying in that root zone. So now heading down to the dam, I just wanted to step outside into the dam here because when I first started this project and I was chatting to Wayne was saying how they were having some issues with the water quality in the dam. And again, you can see here, this is the dam water quality sensors, 2 pipes. One of those pipes is actually on a float. You might have seen that in Liam's video. It floats just under the water at the same depth as the foot valve. So it's a true representation of what he's drawing from the dam. And the other pipe contains 4 temperature sensors at different depths. So we can monitor the water quality, the water temperature at different depths. And why we do that is that if there is too much anaerobic activity at the bottom of the dam due to high nutrient loads and high algal growth, then you can get what's called a dam inversion. So a dam inversion will actually tip the water upside down and bring all of the anaerobic water from the bottom, anaerobic conditions chew away all the oxygen, so there's nothing left in there for anything else to grow. And I say that this is a healthy dam, and this is the reason why I say it's a healthy dam. A family of ducks on the pond, that's a perfect indication that this is a healthy dam. Wildlife will not grow in an unhealthy dam. So over the side, over here, this is the actual overflow area where the water, when the dam overflows, it overflows, and you saw the photos that Alan put up. The water overflows here and runs off into the local creek system. So this is the point where water leaves the property, as well as the side drone we'll see in a minute. But here is a comparison photo. You can see this photo was taken a couple of years ago when there was large nutrient loads in the dam and there was a high algal growth. Now you can see that the water is very clear. The dam is quite low here at the moment, but it is healthy.
I'll just add, we have been adding microbes to the dam too to assist with that algae blooms and so forth.
Thanks for that for a reminder. Yes, so there's microbes, a special formula that Wayne's had built, where those microbes are designed to attack the anaerobic sludge in the bottom of the dam. So it actually eats away at a lot of the debris at the bottom and stops that intense algal growth and anaerobic conditions, and also stops the dam inversion. But not only the nutrient, not only the microbes, but being able to monitor the nutrient movement through the nursery has allowed Wayne to adjust his fertigation systems and to reduce the amount of nutrients leaching out of the bottom of his containers and causing that algal growth. So now we look back up here. This is where the side collection drain is. All the nursery water runs down this side collection drain, and from here to the left is where the overflow is. But you can see here that in the middle of summer, we have a lot of these reed growth comes in, and in this housing here is where the housing is hidden in here. In this housing is where another set of water quality sensors are housed, showing pH, EC, redox, and salinity. And from there, we monitor what is flowing off the nursery and back into the dam. So at the moment, we actually have, I suppose, 3 or 4 water quality monitoring points. One would be the dam for extraction. One would be at the fertigation system where Wayne monitors the incoming water. One at the actual pot leachate, and one in the side drain. So now we're going to just head into this nursery, and we're going to have a look firstly at the cameras. So this camera on the outside there is focused on the dam overflow. So the idea of that is that if that occurs, it'll give us a time frame, and we can then look at the water quality that was leaving the dam. Of course, the sticky trap camera that we've already heard about. All those cameras feed back up into this little box here. Now, this box Wayne had put in specifically, and in here is a PoE or Power over Ethernet router. So all these cameras are actually network cameras. They all feed into this little router system here that then converts the signals into a Wi-Fi signal, and they're transmitted up to the office, which then converts it back into a signal to display on the TV or display in the office. Reason for that was I suppose, Wayne, it was more the hassle and the cost of trying to run cable everywhere.
Yeah, it's a lot cheaper, I think, than running cables for the long distances we're using. So
excellent. So this unit here is one of the little communication nodes. Whoops. So this little box here is the brains. That's where basically it's a mobile phone data logger. The antenna is underneath of this, and there's a battery in there, and that little solar panel maintains enough charge within that battery to actually do its job. And if you note, these solar panels are all under the shade cloth. The shade cloth is what, a 50% shade or 20% shade?
It's a harl netting, so it starts off about 30%, Dave, but it'll slowly lose a bit of that as we go, so it'll increase over time. Yeah.
Okay. So this is one of the sensors. Now, this is the weight scale, as you've heard. It's a 6 plants on a weight scale that monitors plant water use through the change in weight as the plant transpires. but also attached to that communications node is a sub-mains pressure transducer. So this actually monitors the sub-main water pressure, and it will allow Wayne, and that feeds data up to the central control tower as well. So he can look at the pressure of his irrigation system and say, yes, it's working, yes, it's operating at required specifications, but also if they trigger an irrigation and there's no pressure on the line, it signals that there could be a pipe blowout somewhere. But also it is part of the EcoHort reporting, where once a month you're meant to report what your irrigation line pressure is for compliance reporting. Now, further up the path, we've got the leachate capture monitoring station. So again, as you've seen the photos, this is a pot-in-pot situation with a little skirt around it. That skirt's there to stop any irrigation or rainwater from entering into this container. And then in here, of course, we have a pH and an EC sensor monitoring the leachate that comes through the container. So this actually maintains a pool of water in the bottom, because the sensors have to be kept wet, otherwise, specifically the pH sensor. And around the edge of this container, we've drilled a whole pile of holes. So as the leachate comes in, it will flush out what's sitting in there. However, talking with Wayne the other week, there was a bit of a discrepancy where we were seeing low ECs in the root zone from the soil moisture sensors, and we were seeing low ECs out in the side drain. But this particular leachate sensor was showing high ECs. So we decided that we would flush it through. And I think with this, the problem is that the volume of water that's being held in that container is a little too high. And so we don't get enough leachate through the container to completely flush it after every irrigation. And you can see we did some manual tests there to confirm that after we'd flushed it through, the ECs for that leachate did actually return down to what we saw. Wayne, you have a comment on that?
Yeah, I think it just needs some slight modifications so it's flowing through the sensors and then clears. It just built up over time, and we end up with over 3 ECs, which we can have in the middle of summer, but the moisture on the sensors on the moisture, the EC sensors on the moisture probes were showing, well under that, so around about 0.8. So we've done the test manually before and after just to confirm, and the electronic gear, coming back on the dashboard is correct. There's just a small thing I think we need to adjust in the future. Be aware of it, so we just flush it every so often. So it's back now, running really good, and we believe it's spot on at the moment. So.
Excellent. So that just highlights that these sensors do need to have a maintenance regime where, once a month maybe come down and just flush that out until we can improve that sort of system. Again, this is not a standard. You can't necessarily go and buy this off the shelf now. This has been put together for this project, but hopefully this will actually be the prototype that will lead to this sort of technology being used regularly in nursery and hopefully other areas. Because the issue that we have with nursery is that the plants only have that root zone that's in the container, and we have to keep a close eye on that rather than because it is such a small volume. Again, I just stopped on this to show that here's another one of those communication nodes, and again, the solar panel, and they operate quite well under the shade cloth here. There might be a situation if you've got a lot more shade where you may have to run that solar panel out further, out from under the shade, so you can maintain the charge in the batteries. But you can see here that there are several sensors connected to that one little node, one of them being another weight box monitoring the 6 plants. And in there, we've got also 2 little soil moisture sensors, one at the bottom and one at the top there. And that gives us a really good comparison for plant moisture use and from the soil moisture sensors to the weight scales. And I must say, I haven't actually got any data on the soil moisture and weight scale comparison but the actual data it provides is very similar and very consistent. And of course,
Yeah.
that's a soil moisture sensor out of the pot with the 3 spikes. So
Just like to add, David, they also do temperatures, so we're gathering that information as well. Coming in and out of winter, obviously the plants stop at certain temperatures, so that'll give us more data, and it'll sort of coincide with the soil moisture as well.
excellent. That's basically what I was just about to say, that this one sensor here will give us soil moisture and EC and temperature. So they are quite a handy little device. I just at this point want to say that not all soil moisture sensors will do the same job. It is basically a type of soil moisture sensor. This one that we're using in here is called a TDR, or time domain reflexometer. And there are others like capacitance and a variety of different types. So if you're going to go down this path, you must check to make sure that the sensor you're putting in is appropriate for the growing media. So in this case, it is an organic growing media, and only specific soil moisture sensors will give you a true representation or true data. So check. Sorry.
No, sorry, I'd just like to add to that. Over the years, we've tried various sensors and they didn't work. And one of the main reasons we wanted to put the weight, we knew weight works. So we put them in tandem to each other and actually mimic. You can see them going up and down together. So these soil moistures actually work quite well. We did put 3 in a pot. We have quite a tall pot. We had that pot specifically designed, and we have a little bit of wetting in the winter months in the bottom, which can lose a bit of root zone. So we moved to 3 sensors to try to monitor that a bit more thoroughly. But as previous speakers said, you get an overlap of the sensors. So two is plenty for that profile, and we get that data. We can read the bottom to the top. If you're getting too much wet in the bottom, you can sort of reduce your water. So there's a couple of different things. It's very good for management, going on a day-to-day management for irrigation moisture.
I'm just going to go back here for a second, because there's been a comment that came up that one plant is not a big enough sample for the size of the nursery, or for a single growing area. And I have to reiterate here that the nursery has multiple irrigation zones, and it's a prototype, so we are just trying to prove a concept, and it has proved to be quite a useful tool. Obviously, if you're going to put this into a commercial nursery and automate the systems, then yes, I would expect that you would have a set of sensors in every irrigation zone, or you actually monitor multiple plants in the same zone to give you a true representation. But yes, it will come down.
Yeah, the original one you've got there, David, that's what we were trying to do. We're trying to monitor the leachates and so forth out of those 6 pots. The trouble is we had trouble capturing that information with that setup. The single pot is a system we use manually. We had about 10 zones right across the nursery. So it seems to work. It's pretty representative of, Koya's pretty stable mix and it's pretty consistent. So it's pretty, that's the system we've been using for about 30 years. So we did leave the manual system in, and we checked it against the automation. The single pot one works well for our crop. With smaller pots, obviously you need to look at something different. But it's a really critical thing, and I think you've got it shortly, where we're actually doing the leachate volume out of the bottom of the pot that we had to split. So the original system, you might want to talk more about, didn't sort of pick up what we required, where the other 2 systems do it nicely.
So yes, as Wayne just said, this 6-pot weight scale here actually has a little tipping bucket and a capture mechanism underneath, where we thought we could actually monitor the leachate running out of these 6 containers. But the actual physical design, or being able to put those sensors in there on sitting on the ground like that was a little bit fraught. We couldn't quite come up with the right design. So we went to the individual systems, and as Wayne's just iterated, that we are going to look at another little system further down, because part of nursery management and best management practice is to monitor the leaching fraction. So the idea is that to refine your irrigation scheduling, that you actually monitor leaching fraction to maintain the fraction to around 12% or thereabouts of what you're applying. So you only want about 12% of water leaching out of the bottom of the container as to what you've applied. And we'll talk about this in a moment, just down the row a little bit, because just further along this row is another pot where those 3 soil moisture sensors have been installed. And you can see these have actually been installed, and there's a cover that's been put around them. That's just to make sure that they stay stable and in place, so they don't actually come loose through movement or plant maintenance. And these are all feeding into one of those little communication nodes. And up on the control tower, we can see each level, and Wayne can focus his irrigation for each level of those soil moisture sensors depending on plant growth. Also attached to that system, as you saw in both Liam's and Alan's presentation, the dendrometer. So this is a little dendrometer. It sits, and this is the actual grafted stem. So in this particular situation, we originally had it on the rootstock stem until the graft got big enough where we put this on. And this is actually monitoring the shrinking and swelling of the stem as the plant transpires. So it's very minute, but over time, over the day, over the diurnal cycle, you'll see the plant stem will swell as it draws up moisture, and shrinks as it releases moisture through transpiration. But not only that, it also measures and monitors the growth of that stem. So I was hoping that the guys would talk a bit more about that previously, but the data that it gives you is A, how that plant is transpiring at that moment, B, what the growth of that stem has been over a period of time, and then collectively it gives you a crop growth average or increase in plant weight as it develops. Very handy piece of tool, and basically between the dendrometer and the soil moisture sensors, with all of this technology, I think these two are probably the ones that and the water quality ones, these two are probably the ones that you look at most, aren't they, Wayne?
Yeah, the dendrometer, it was a late entry, I suppose. We put it in later. But one thing out of the equation we were lacking, we didn't know when the plants are going in and out of stress. So we've installed the dendrometer. Another system which we'll probably look at ourselves, or if the project goes further, we'll certainly try to get it in, is a camera, a FLIR camera, which is what's it, David?
So they're an infrared camera that
Infrared.
monitors the crop temperature.
Yeah. So virtually take a 2 metre square crop, just have like a video camera over in the corner, and it'll give you that also stress, plants going in and out of stress. They use that in Europe in the hothouse industry and that. So we just needed that in the equation. We need to know when the plant's going in and out of stress. Maybe a light watering in the middle of heat wave, things like that can just help your plant and put them out of stress. This variety of citrus too, it's a clementine selection, so it's a little bit scruffy to normal citrus varieties. So just add that. So.
Okay. Also, too, I just wanted to mention that yes, this technology is being used here on citrus trees or citrus seedlings, but the technology can be used on a variety of crops, and that's one of the reasons why we started to look at the weight scale, because if you're growing smaller plants, whether you're using plug trays or little forestry seedlings and that sort of thing, you can actually use weight scales to monitor, say, a plug tray of 100 plugs, which are too small to put any sort of soil moisture sensor in. So the weight scale comes in really handy then, because that will relate basically how the seedlings are using soil moisture. So there are different technologies for different crops, and I have been using weight scales and load cells to monitor potted colour in smaller 140 ml containers at another nursery, and that has proved to be quite successful. We can monitor plant water use during the day, and we relate it to the volume of the plant or the volume of the container and the water holding capacity of the growing media. and then we can calculate out how much water is being used and trigger irrigation automatically to replenish what's being used, similar to the way that evapotranspiration is used in irrigation. So this is the other sensor further down the line that Wayne mentioned before. This is the leaching fraction sensor using 2 tipping buckets. So these are the same tipping buckets that are on the rain gauges, on the weather stations that you've seen. The little spoon in there holds 5 mils of water. So every time it tips, that's 5 mils of water. So the idea of having 2 of them here, the open one captures any rain or irrigation that's fallen, and the second one with the plant in it purely captures what is leaching through the plant. So as I was saying just before, this is calculating the leaching fraction. So one gives us the volume of water that's been applied, and the other one gives us the volume of water that's come through the pot. I know Hitachi were working on trying to make this it work in real time, so they could use it as an irrigation stop. But the unfortunate thing is you have to actually stop the irrigation before the leaching occurs. So it's kind of putting the cart before the horse. And I just wanted to mention this photo up on the right-hand side here. This is the old method. So nursery growers, production nurseries have been using this method for the last 20 years. Same principle, only it's a manual system where we have an open container running through and capturing what is being applied. And then we have a plant in a container that captures what is running through or leaching through the plant, the pot. And the principle with this is that you would go round and you would put this, or you would have these in every irrigation zone, and you would monitor, and it's quite a labour-intensive process. So by
We've
putting,
We've been doing that for 30 years. So we have about 10 of those stations around the nursery. We measure the volume of water, and we also measure EC and pH, and it's all documented. With the electronic version, you're getting it live. You can relate it to an irrigation cycle or a rain event. So it's a lot, you collect all this manual data, but you actually put it into something that's meaningful. So the dashboard's actually doing that. So, and the labour component was, doing that twice a week. You imagine 10 times. It was sort of half a day job, nearly a day a week for someone to do that, collect those records.
Yeah.
Data.
Okay. Whoops. Sorry, I've just changed the screen there. I think we're kind of running over time a little bit, so we'll just let this run through. So again, like I said, this is a prototype system. We've never been able to automate leaching fractions. And again, you can see the different stages of the crop. And if you get seasick, I would suggest you look away. This is not going to continue. I just wanted to show you that the nursery continues up to the potting shed, and beyond the potting shed is the office and the other half of the nursery. So this is the propagation area, where there is a constant process of propagating new seedlings and moving them through the system and then out into the growing areas. So what's a standard sort of cropping cycle time for you, Wayne? 12 months?
No, the rootstock's generally about anywhere between 10 and 12 months. We grow about 300,000 plus. We have 7 main rootstocks, so we try to have them in advance. So we do cull a lot of rootstocks and off types. So it's a process which you don't have the rootstock. Then 12 months when you put it planted out, and you have about 12 months from when you put the graft onto the tree goes out. So it's a cycle. Citrus trees about generally around 2 years, depending on the variety. Some varieties are very vigorous. The one we've been looking at with the monitoring is quite a slow grower and a different growth habit to a lot of the other citrus varieties.
Okay. So very different cropping cycles for people who are growing potted colour or the little pretty daisy flowers that you see in the retail shops. That'll take a couple of months or 3 or 4 months. And the seedling growers that will grow vegetable seedlings for farmers, they'll pump them out in a couple of months, I believe, won't?
Yes, that's correct. We have a hot house on the side. We actually germinate seedlings and then we prick them out into the tubes. We're looking at a few different new options of that to improve that, but it's a labour intensive, and but we like to have straight roots and obviously no bent roots and off types. There's a lot of off types, specifically one variety of about 40% off types, one of the rootstocks, so we need to colour that out.
Okay. So that's basically that. I decided that we would have a quick look at the control tower. So this is the camera layout in the office, all coming up to this. This is a 55-inch screen. So you can either look at the cameras all in one on the screen, or you can scroll through the cameras. That's the view of the overflow from the dam. So again, like I said, that if there is a dam overflow, you can come back and check the footage and get the time and then check the water quality. So for environmental reporting, you can state, yes, we had an overflow that left off-site, but the water quality was within environmental guidelines. And then, of course, the sticky trap camera as well. So now just to quickly run through some of the sections on the control tower. This is the main screen or the landing screen, and you can see along the top here are the alerts and alarms. Although there are alerts and alarms there now, it's not saying that there's something wrong. It's just simply saying that perhaps one of the sensors has either gone over or is under the threshold limit. But the other part of this is that you can put either Google Maps or a photo of the nursery for land use, and you can look at where you can go to. That screen there also allows you to pull up the data for the individual irrigation zones. As we're only monitoring that one nursery, that one shade house, that's all we have showing, but you could actually have this entire screen showing every single irrigation zone in the nursery. And then the next is the weather data. So you can see it gives you a 7-day forecast of temperature, precipitation, and wind. The wind one is very handy for when you're planning to do some form of spraying, if you need to. It'll show you the potential wind in the coming days, so you can plan when to do the spraying. If we scroll down a bit further on that, this is the pot leachate. So here you can see this spike here and this drop here in the pH and the EC. That's actually when we did that flush that we saw earlier on. So it's quite, it is real time, and it is quite representative of what goes on in the nursery. And so you can see that the pH is relatively consistent there, and the ECs have been relatively consistent. And the ECs are basically because Wayne fertigates. It maintains a higher EC than normal. And then you can change the date range to give you a year. So this is from the 1st of January, and we can see that there has been a fluctuation in the pH, but it is within acceptable parameters. So although there is fluctuation, it's not a major concern. Again, with the ECs have fluctuated, but that's not really a major concern. And then as the plants grow and Wayne ramps up the fertigation, the nutrients for the plants, you can see that happening there. So it gives you a really good overview of the cropping cycle, and you can relate that to basically seasons and rain events. So there is a lot of overlay that you can do with rain events, so you can look at how the rain is affecting the data, but we haven't really gone into that here. This is just a quick overview. And again, you can get your redox and salinity if you're interested in looking at that sort of data. This is the nursery runoff in the side drain. You can see how the pH and the EC varies dramatically. And you can, again, relate the spikes in that to irrigation events or rain events. And you can get redox and it totally dissolve solids there as well. This is the temperature in the dam, so it shows you how the temperatures fluctuate day and night, and that looks pretty consistent. And then, of course, you can change the date range, and you can see how the temperatures in the dam fluctuates, and you can see that surface temperature fluctuates dramatically, while the other depths tend to be a little bit more consistent.
Yeah, that dam dropped down in that period, and the actually top sensor was out in the ambient air. So that's the ambient air bouncing around.
So the dam level was quite low. Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
And then the pH and the EC in the dam as well. So you can see the pH and the EC have changed. Again, though, they're kind of within parameters, but we will see here as the date range changes that there is a spike. There is a spike here in the EC where it became, sorry, in the pH, where it became a little bit alkaline. We're not too sure what the event was. We'd have to go back through the data, and this is the benefit of having this data, is that we can identify the day and time that happened and go back and have a look at what happened, or whether there was a rain event, or whether there was some sort of plant maintenance going on. So we can then either adjust it or fix whatever caused the issue, if it's within our capability. And then, of course, the free chlorine sensor, as we saw in Liam's presentation, it produces this graph when an event occurs. This is us when we were calibrating the system, but the threshold is 2 parts per million, and you can see that these two events had enough residue after the event to be able to tick that off. And that is part of the EcoHawk compliance reporting as well. So we will move on from there. And I have actually got sorry, I'm just looking at a question here. Do you know who has designed the weight trays for monitoring plant water use in plug tray systems? So to answer that question, there are a couple of companies around that do provide it. The most prominent international one, of course, is Priva, that have a system designed for that. But there are a couple of other systems around that, if you did have a look, you could certainly find a provider that can do it. In this case, all of the sensors used here have been designed and put together by ICT International out of Armidale. They have actually put together the weight scales, the water quality sensors, the soil moisture sensors. So they certainly do have some experience in putting those together as well. If you were to speak to any of the protected cropping equipment suppliers, they would probably be able to point you in the direction if you wanted to look for that specifically. Okay, so I think I might have gone over time there a little bit. No, we're kind of on track. So if there's no further questions there, I'm just going to move on so we can try and knock off the rest of this. The next presenter we've got is Celeste Cook. So she is from GIA. So Celeste is from Green Life Industries Australia. Celeste is going to give us a quick overview of the best management practices and benefits of smart farming technologies. So I will just stop sharing my screen, Celeste, and you can have the floor. Welcome.
Thanks, Dave. I am loving your presentation. I did like our virtual walk around. That was nice. It's very helpful to know what you were talking about. Let's just see. Okay, how's that?
Perfect. We can see your presentation.
Excellent. Okay, so I didn't stuff it up, which is a nice something new. Okay, so for you that don't know me, my name is Celeste Cook. I'm the Australian Plant Production Standards Administrator. The Australian Plant Production Standards are owned and run by Green Life Industry Australia, same people that employed Dave to do this particular project. Green Life Industry Australia is the peak industry body that represents production nurseries on a national basis. So we look after you guys in biosecurity issues and higher level kind of government issues, things like that. So we have quite a lot of accreditations that we do. Wayne, who was speaking before, he's accredited with NIASA and EcoHawk, and that is our best management practices and our environmental management system. All of our programs have been made for this industry, so it's not a square peg in a round hole kind of situation. And I suppose the reason that I'm presenting here with Dave is that using all of this sensor technology for monitoring and your record keeping really fits in just magically with our systems, because this sensor technology provides you with your record keeping and things like that ensure that you're meeting with best management practices standards, such as, your pH, your EC, your leachates and things like that. So it makes perfect sense that the two of them fit together really, really well. So I'll just go through the three of the main programs that we have. They all have guidelines for them. You can implement our standards without becoming accredited by purchasing the guidelines at nurseryproductionfms.com.au. If you are interested in any of them, we have extension officers in all of the states of Australia. I'm the extension officer also for Tasmania and South Australia. But any of you guys that are in Queensland would know Barry Naylor. He's our extension officer there. And we've got NIASA guidelines, EcoHealth guidelines and Biosecure HACCP guidelines that are available for purchase. And they'll guide you through your best management practices and applying those in your nursery. We do also have industry-specific programs that we work with other horticultural industries to bring to certain producers, such as avocado, landscape macadamias. We've got a few more that are on the run. We do those so that we can guarantee those particular industries that they're going to be getting the highest quality stock. We also have one which is not specifically related to plant production, which is our ethical plant production specification, which we've made to assist our growers to compete for labour in the current market. And it helps them to show that they're treating their staff ethically, that's a hard one, and to become more attractive employers. So we do work across quite a range of different areas and production methods. So NIASA is the first of our accreditations, and NIASA is our base accreditation. NIASA stands for Nursery Industry Accreditation Scheme Australia, but basically it is our best management practice accreditation. With NIASA, we look at a few different things. So really what we want to do with NIASA is ensure that you're producing good quality plants, you're managing your risk and disease pathways, and you're really looking at trying to function in a fairly efficient way. So we look at your nursery design, your layout, how your production efficiencies, how your workflows go, your general production hygiene, and we look to see that you're applying, the standard best practice. I should say that all of our programs are reviewed yearly to ensure that we're actually keeping up with the latest research and development, and that a lot of the projects that people like Dave do actually, a lot of their information ends up in our guidelines. The basics for NIASA are pretty much these four things, which is water disinfestation, having good growing surfaces, having good growing media, and nursery hygiene. These are the basics. There's a lot in NIASA, but it is a continual improvement program. But with these four basics, you can get NIASA accredited. So having water disinfestation or a clean source of water. So that means ensuring that the water that you're watering your plants with is clean. It's not carrying pathogens. If it's from a source where it might be carrying pathogens, say it's in touch with the dirt, you're looking to disinfect that with chlorine, reverse osmosis, or one of those approved methods. We look at your growing surface. We basically want to see that your growing surface is not going to be responsible also for introducing pathogens to your plants through water splash or through sitting in dirt and things like that. So things like benching or having your growing surfaces be something like a 20 mil blue metal to prevent that kind of splash up into your plants and spreading disease. We do accredit nursery growing media suppliers. So in Queensland, we've got Bassett Parks and Rocky Point. When those guys are NIASA accredited, you can be assured that your growing media has been pasteurised to a point where you're not going to have issues with things like Pythium and Phytophthora coming through into your plants. We look specifically at the temperatures, the way that they're turning their rows, where they're taking their temperatures, and the records that they keep to ensure that you guys are getting good quality media. And basic nursery hygiene is the other part of our system. Looking at if you're doing any propagation and things like that, you're cleaning your tools properly beforehand and you're cleaning the surfaces around you. So those are your basics. Once you've got those down pat, you can get NIASA accredited, and we audit you every year. And once we audit you, we give you what's called an action list, and from that, you've got a list for your continual improvement for your business for the next year to work on. The second of our accreditations, which is really pertinent to what Dave and everyone has been speaking about, it's one that Wayne has as well, is EcoHort. This is our environmental management system, and it looks at all of these areas such as your land and water management. So looking at contamination, erosion, your water use, your water quality, how you're storing it, how you're releasing it, the quality of it when you release it, air and noise, those particular areas, you know, that not too many noisy nurseries, but we do have noisy media growers, producers, because they're using earth moving equipment and they can get quite dusty. So quite a lot of our growing media producers are also EcoHort certified. EcoHort has actually helped quite a lot of our growers with problem neighbours. It's also helped us in Western Australia to get our nurseries exempt from water restrictions. We were going to all of our nurseries were going to have to reduce their use by 10%. But because of EcoHort, they could prove that they were managing their water responsibly, and they were then exempt from the 10% reduction in their water use if they had EcoHort accreditation. So it's a very handy accreditation to have, especially in those instances. So the last one that I will go through is Biosecure HACCP. Biosecure HACCP is really, if you want to produce the best quality plants that you possibly can, that are as free of pest and disease as possible, then Biosecure HACCP is the accreditation. Biosecure HACCP, the HACCP stands for Hazard Analysis Critical Control Point. So what we're looking at in Biosecure HACCP is managing those risk pathways from entry and exit into your nursery, and managing the risks coming in and out, but also documenting that. Biosecure HACCP is also a market access accreditation. So it has been approved by the government biosecurity regulators for use for market access interstate. A lot of people in Queensland use Biosecure HACCP to move products if they're in a red imported fire ant zone. Seems to be a bit of a problem there, and the cost for inspections is quite high. You're probably wondering why I have the Swiss cheese model from COVID up. I have it up because Biosecure HACCP works in an extremely similar way. So with the Swiss cheese model, it was put out there during COVID as a methodology to say, look, no one method is completely perfect. You need to incorporate other methods into trying to manage this disease from spreading. And it's very, very similar in a nursery. You're looking at a pest or disease entering. For us, the first port of call is performing import inspections to any of those plants that you're introducing to your nursery. So you're not taking any green matter or green life into other areas where your plants are growing. You're quarantining them, you're inspecting them. They'll either pass or fail inspection once you've decided what you're going to do with the plants, which is either introduce it into the nursery because it's perfectly healthy. You might have to treat it because you've not received particularly good quality stock, or you might be sending it back because it's rubbish. Then you can decide what you do with your with those imported plants from there. One of the good things that we have found with import inspections is that a lot of the guys that are performing these now are really taking note of what their suppliers are sending them, and their suppliers are taking note that they're not accepting anything that's of a lower quality. The second area that we look to manage as far as risks for pest and disease or weed entry is your site surveillance. So performing site surveillances around your site, so the non-growing areas of your sites, making sure that you're managing particularly weeds or any pests that might be on weeds or other vegetation and disease out there, and ensuring that that's not coming into your production area. And then we have crop monitoring, which I think everybody does in some way or other. But with Biosecure HACCP, it is a systematic crop monitoring effort that you'll be doing, and you record each of those crop monitoring events. And you ensure that you get around to every space in your production facility at least fortnightly, depending on what your crop is. And then the last one, which is really important because you want to ensure that you actually have you're sending your customer the highest quality stock. You want to maintain your reputation, is dispatch inspections. So dispatch inspections really important for market access, especially, but also really important to maintain a good relationship with your customers and send them the best possible stock, and also to maintain your own reputation. So Biosecure HACCP really is it is a really good method of high health plant production. It is based on a system. It does require recording. All of our accreditations in some way or other will require recording. And I suppose they start with NIASA with your basic recording of your water quality and things like that, and then moving up into EcoHort, where there's a lot more quality parameters around your water, your release water, your growing media and things like that. Biosecure HACCP, we've done various studies. A grower in Queensland has managed to increase their productivity by about 3 to 5%. They've reduced their labour with their pest management, and they've reduced their pesticide applications. And they've managed to improve that to a point where they've been able to implement IPM with potted colour in seedlings. So that's a 6 week crop in Queensland, and being able to implement IPM with a 6 week crop is pretty special. So as I said before, Biosecure HACCP, it is recognised by the state and territory governments. It does work in a similar way to which ICAs work. If any of you have heard of the Interstate Certification Assurance Scheme, which is run by the government, it's the only other national scheme. And instead of ICAs, we have ECCPs. The big difference being that you don't pay for an inspector to come to your property and do the inspection as you might be treating plants or getting them ready for dispatch. You do all of that yourself. So the aim of the game is to save you guys some money, to skill you up to be able to do all of that stuff yourself, and not have to go through that with government regulators. And for some organisations, I know it's saving them quite a bit of cash, particularly if you don't have an inspector near you and you've got to pay for their travel. With all of our accreditations now, we have a digital management platform that has your record keeping on there. So whatever's the requirement of your accreditation, whatever accreditation you hold, you will have access to the record keeping on the audit management system, which is our platform. And from that, you can download all of your data into Excel spreadsheets or CSV files, so that you can further interrogate that. So if you're doing crop monitoring, you can download all your crop monitoring records. If you're doing chemical applications, you can download your chemical application records and things like that. Your pH, your EC, all of those quality parameters that you're measuring as part of EcoHort, you can also keep records of all of that. So that's a very quick rundown of all of our accreditation schemes, and this is where you go to find a little bit more about them. So the Australian Plant Production Standard website is actually nurseryproductionfms.com.au. You'll find information. It holds the biggest technical library that there is for nursery production. It's all free. You can purchase the guidelines through there, or you can contact the extension officer from your area there as well by clicking on technical providers, and that'll have all of our details there. But that's it from me. Thank
Excellent.
you.
Thanks, Celeste. I'd just like to add to that there's Steve Blythe in Western Australia and Colin Hunt in New South Wales, who are extension officers, and they are available for anybody interested, as is Celeste and Barry Naylor in Queensland. We are currently in the process of employing a new Victorian extension officer, so there will be one available in Victoria as well, and they can help you through this entire process if need be. And the benefit of this process is basically it helps to reduce the amount of manual reporting that you do and labour costs. So thank you, Celeste, for that. That's great.
Thanks.
And our last presenter for the day is Andrew Chamberlain from Queensland Farmers Federation. Andrew has been managing a couple of different projects for Queensland Farmers Federation, both in energy savers and digital farming. And I've asked him to come along to give us an overview of what he's been doing, just to show that there are a number of these projects out there and the research is being done. So, watch this space. Hopefully good stuff will come out of it. Andrew, over to you.
Thank you, David. Hopefully that's shared my screen now.
Yep, we can see that, not a problem.
Awesome, thank you. Yeah, thanks for the opportunity to present. And yeah, David and I have worked together a bit because he did some great work with nurseries on some energy efficiency audits that we did a couple of years ago. We've also compared notes a couple of times on a digital agriculture project that we've been running here, and it's interesting, as one of the earlier speakers was talking about some of the learnings. I could definitely relate to those, and I promise I haven't changed what I've written here, but it's almost word for word what the learnings were in your project. But I'll start by talking about a microgrids project that we've talked about, and that'll probably be the bulk of the presentation. And then I'll talk quickly about our digital ag project. There we go. So this is the project was funded under the Regional and Remote Communities Program, a federal government program, and you can see there the partners we had in the project. So we were running at QFF with a company in New South Wales called Constructive Energy, who do some really good engineering and modelling, Reaqua, a solar pumping and irrigation experts, and Cotton Australia, one of our members and partners at QFF. Just quickly about QFF, we're not your typical farmer organisation in that we don't have direct members like National Farmers Federation or New South Wales Farmers do, for example. Our members are there on the left, so we're a peak body representing specific topics that are common to all of those groups there. So you'll see over the page we tend to look at things like water, energy, biosecurity, workforce planning, and all of those kind of things for those members, and they still look after their members directly on things, all the usual stuff like health and safety and and those kind of things. So I work in the energy projects team, and we like to think we work on practical projects direct with farmers that provide good evidence and information to help the industry grow and to provide useful policy input to our policy team. So why microgrids? One of the things that we've found in the course of all our energy audits is that farmers are doing a great job in improving their energy productivity on farm. So doing a lot of work to improve irrigation systems, not just the pumps, but the whole systems. As we've heard in some of the earlier presentations, processing, cooling, heating. There's a lot of different energy users on these farms, and we've been looking at ways of optimizing that, and people have of course been installing solar, and it is hard to match up the solar generation with consumption on farms, because the variation in consumption on farms is quite significant as well, like seasonally and annually and that kind of stuff. So we started thinking, what if farmers could collaborate to share their power across meters, so that they could collaborate, even within their own network of meters. Like some farms have multiple meters, so that you could, generate power on one meter, and when you've got some excess power, you could utilize it to run some pumps or something that you might have on a separate power connection. And there's also some challenges in Queensland around network and costs and those kind of things, and reliability that we wanted to look at too. That's a good segue into this slide. So we found that regional grids are aging, farmers are facing reliability issues, so dropouts and brownouts and those kind of things. The cost of some of the daily charges and demand charges are increasing, so as well as the supply charges. So there's been a structural change in energy bills over the last 10 years. People are going off the grid, looking for diesel solutions, and we really think that the grid forms a good background or a good platform for energy efficiency, decarbonisation and energy sharing. So we really thought there's some good opportunities there to use a project like this, and develop models like this to improve the utilisation of the grid, as well as better outcomes for farms. So what is a microgrid? And we kind of have this conversation every time we talk to someone different. It's a whole lot of things, but essentially it's a physical energy grid that can generate and distribute electricity within its geographic footprint, and it can be islanded off the electricity network in one case. So if there's a fault in the network, then a microgrid could effectively has the storage and generation and consumption to be able to operate in an island mode. But there's all sorts of variations of that, and you would have heard of terms like virtual power plants and virtual net metering and those kind of things. And that's why we always defined what we were talking about as a microgrid at the start of the project. So we looked at 4 different areas, and we looked at 4 different types of microgrid. And we looked in New South Wales as well, because we had our project partners based in there, and the program was a national program, not just a Queensland one. So you can see some criteria that we had. In that top table, there's the different archetypes. There's a single enterprise, which is just one farm that might have a couple of meters. Then there's an edge of grid, and we really wanted to look at someone that was on a fragile, all the way down the end of the electricity network situation. I wanted to look at a potential large microgrid with multiple farmers and multiple stakeholders and participants. So we worked with a group of cane farmers in Mackay. And we also wanted to look at a bit of a hybrid of those, where you have a single property owner, but lots and lots of grid connections within a diverse network, or a spider web of a network, if you like. And then we had some criteria. So we wanted it to be practical, so achievable. and replicable, so you could do them everywhere, high impact, and we wanted to work with partners that were prepared to share the story so we could get maximum benefit. The value drivers. So we did some very detailed financial modelling. We installed real-time meters on for each of those microgrids, including about 35 in Mackay, but about 55 overall across those different microgrids. And we wanted to look at some of the things that were of value to the market, because clearly there was a cost benefit to the farmers participating. But we wanted to check what other benefits would be available to the wider network and to other electricity customers, and then understand how they were currently incorporated into cost benefit analyses. So if a farmer does a microgrid project, there are benefits to the local network, but they're not always available to be costed into the project. And you can see there, that top table, there's self-consumption, so the farmer gets a benefit there. Depending on the size and the local network, there's potential for them to earn a feed-in tariff, or for the microgrid to earn a feed-in tariff. There's ancillary and wholesale markets, and you may have heard of these, where batteries might be able to provide some FCAS or frequency services, and there's limited accessibility, so there is some opportunity to do that. So there might be a benefit to the network, but only a limited availability to be able to monetize that benefit for the microgrid. And then these other two upgraded deferral permits payments, and that's where you can only do that in Queensland where there's an identified network constraint, and Ergon are offering funding to overcome that constraint. So outside those constrained areas, there's no opportunity to do that. And then local energy markets and PPAs, there's probably more opportunities outside regional Queensland, such as New South Wales, but in some of the areas that we looked in Queensland, those things are not really available. And then we just wanted to look at some of the other, we call it a value stack, these other benefits that we found available to the other farms, that again are not really costed in the business model, but definitely benefits. So worth considering when you're trying to understand whether or not to go ahead with a microgrid. So we did these. This is a very quick summary that tries to pick up about a year of modelling work in a single table. You can see the 4 columns there that show the 4 microgrids that we had and the type of microgrid in the second row of that column. You can see the infrastructure that we proposed that would provide enough generation and storage to provide a good solid foundation for those microgrids, and they're a bit different for each one. So depending on the size, so quite a small one at the winery at Port compared to Mackay, where there's much more a much more diverse load and many more farms involved there, and of course a significant capital cost for some of those, although Port was the smallest again. And then we modelled the net present value on a 12 and 25 year basis. So the reason for the 12-year basis was we got some feedback from some other farms we were consulting with about the project that we should consider the net present value within probably the current generation of ownership of the farm rather than a full 25 years. So yeah, most of them, they're all positive net present value after 25 years, and you can see that one of them was the St George one was after 12 years. We did some sensitivity analysis, so we looked at things like if we could get some savings on the capital cost. So that's just to illustrate there that if we managed to get a 20% discount, 15 to 25% discount on those capital costs, then we'd improve that NPV significantly. And then we just wanted to compare. We sort of in talking to the Australian Renewable Energy Agency about, you know, the value of these projects, and they said to us, well, what is actually the lowest cost intervention that you could do rather than such an infrastructure heavy project like a 2 megawatt hour battery and 650 kilowatts of PV in the case of Mackay. So we really looked at the availability of some opportunities, such as, for example, virtual net metering at the site we used in St George, where it's a single farm at the end of a line that has about 14 of its own grid connection points. They already have a lot of solar. They have some very high capacity irrigation and transfer pumps. And we looked at whether or not we could just do some virtual net metering on that site and achieve some energy balance and some benefit for the network and the farm. And that would be a much more simple solution and involving less infrastructure spend than putting in back a lot more batteries and solar. However, it needs some regulation changes and some changes to the business model for network charging in Queensland, which I think will come in time, but at this point in time, they're not available to the farm. So that was what we mean by comparing the lowest cost interventions. So we've come up with, of course, the challenges and the opportunities to de-risk microgrids across the 4 areas, not just restricted to Queensland. And I don't want to, I won't go through all of those individually, and I'll share the presentation with you. But I guess technologically, there's very fast movement in the technologies that are available to manage these systems. Certainly, the generation and storage technologies are available, and the costs of those are coming down rapidly. And the technology to manage the microgrid systems in real time is becoming better and better all the time. A challenge we found, even running some real-time meters, was connectivity in regional areas, having good access to 3G, 4G, 5G. And then there's a few regulatory market issues, particularly with the microgrids in Queensland, around being able to trial new tariffs that might really incentivise the moving to these new types of models, and some of the processes around connection and those sorts of things. And of course, heaps and heaps of opportunities as a result. So whether or not there's you know, the opportunity to do some more trials, use this process that the Australian Energy Regulator has established called the regulatory sandbox, where we can safely and temporarily test some of these models and tariffs. So there's loads and loads of opportunities there that we think as well. So it wasn't just all about challenges. So that's the microgrid project in a nutshell. And so I just thought I'd talk quickly about our digital agriculture project that we've done over the last year or two as well. So we partnered up with NZen and NNNCO at QFF here, and we worked with 2 farms. And we wanted to test the idea of remote access. So these are farms using LoRaWAN networks. And we also wanted to test the usability of having access to lots and lots of different data feeds at one time. So there's a bunch of technical questions here being investigated by the companies that developed the networks, as well as an extension aspect to the program where we worked with the farms to try and understand how they could utilise this information. There's a couple of really good things. I'll just quickly summarise a couple of the findings that we found, but one of the earlier speakers talked about being able to just watch data and observe data and over time look for patterns. And this was where we did this project was a farm that had come out of a long period of drought into a period of so much rainfall in the 12 months that we had these soil moistures installed that they actually hardly used their irrigation pumps that they just put in with a grant from the earlier Energy Savers program. But you can see there, this is soil moisture at 3 different depths at the same point. And the farmer was able to observe things like the day-to-day take-up of water through that top profile. And it's not necessarily the case with this one, but he could see in some of them where the take-up of moisture had stopped at the 2nd and 3rd level below ground, indicating to him that perhaps the roots had drowned or had been damaged by all that months of rainfall that they'd had. So just being able to understand that was quite useful to them. On a different farm, so one of the other of the 2 farms, and I haven't put I've put a photo of a leaf wetness sensor there, not the energy sensor, because it's a bit more boring than the leaf wetness sensor. But this we're at a intensive animal farm where they've got banks of ventilation fans in the sheds, and there are 2 identical sheds. The only difference being that one of them has the latest technology, variable speed EC fans, and the other shed has the older belt-driven sort of 1.5 horsepower fans. And so the top graph there is the new variable speed fans just operating over 24 hours, and the bottom is the old fans, the old belt-driven fans. So you can definitely see the pattern there in consumption. The variable speed fans on top actually just increase in speed and therefore increase in energy consumption as the day gets hotter, and then slow down and eventually stop, or slow down to a very slow speed as the temperature becomes milder. The fans below, they're obviously on or off under the system. So you can see there that they're cycling a little bit most of the time for the first couple of hours. They're on, but you can just see it's in a little spot there where it's kind of turned a couple off and turned them back on as the temperature sensors have detected a bit of a change. But the key to notice there is the scale on the left-hand side of the top graph goes up to 500 watts, and the scale on the left-hand side of the bottom graph goes up to 4,000 watts. So the fans in the new fans are using, and we worked out over the course of the year that they're using about 25 to 35% of the energy of the old fans. So about at least a 3/4 saving. So that was a light bulb moment for that farmer, and he's immediately moved to upgrade all the sheds to those more energy efficient fans. This is just another, the earlier speaker talked about the just watching data, and this is what one of the farms was doing when I got there to talk to them about things one day, and they had the data from different temperature sensors, because they have a couple of crops that are extremely sensitive to temperatures, and they've got remote systems that turn on frost fans. So this one here, they're comparing the temperatures at a couple of different paddocks on screens side by side to kind of recapping over the last couple of days temperature fluctuations and how close they may or may not have got to frosts. And they're actually able to work out that there's a temperature difference of about 5 degrees over the different paddocks on their property throughout some nights. So yeah, they're going back to these lessons, which are just a repeat of what some of the earlier speakers said, that the definite immediate benefits. So they were able to test theories and concepts, and by observing data in real time. They're also able to make longer term observations around, starting to understand things that they might have had a good understanding about from their observations over years, but now they have evidence to back it up around things like how long it takes rainfall at different intensities to penetrate different levels of soil. A good one that we found at the Intensive Animal Farm was I was just sitting there looking at data with them and observed a significant change in the water quality in their dam that they irrigate crops and irrigate the piggery with. And it turned out that the dam had got down to a certain level. There wasn't enough water in the creek, so they brought in bore water into the dam, which increased TDS and conductivity, etc. And then a conversation ensued about water quality and pig growth, to which the farmer that was looking after the pigs had felt like the pigs had had a better growth rate over the most recent time while they'd been using predominantly creek water. So that's kind of got them thinking around how they manage their water quality by blending water at different rates to improve their pig growth rates. So there's all sorts of unknown opportunities in that data. And both of those farmers, I think, would say that it is a commitment to take on board these new technologies. And someone said learning curve earlier on. So, it's a new habit to form to come back to the farm office and plug in and look at the data on the screen. It's great to have the upfront dashboard on your phone, but it's also fantastic to have that that time series of data that you can go back and investigate any events or things that might have happened on the farm. I just want to, for those of you that are based in Queensland, just give a quick plug for a couple of things that might be useful for you. Most farms have houses on them, and there's these home appliance rebates that are available to households in Queensland at the moment between $300 and $1,000 for upgrading fridges, washing machines, solar hot water, air conditioning, those kind of appliances. Then there's the QBest Ag program, where there are rebates of between $4,000 and $12,500 for upgrading to energy efficient equipment, so compressors, pumps, lighting controls, a lot of those kind of things, and there's details if you follow that QR code. And there's also the QFF Farm Business Resilience Program, helping farms develop resilience plans for natural disasters, which may lead to other funding opportunities for implementation measures, those kind of things. So that's all I had, David. I've got, if anyone would like to ask me any questions or follow up by email afterwards, there are my contact details. But thank you again for the opportunity to present. And I felt like I whipped through a whole lot of stuff there in a few minutes, so happy to take on any questions.
Look, that's understandable, Andrew. There is a lot of information there, and I dare say a lot of people are going, well, why were we looking at that? And I wanted, these are the common problems that are happening across all farms, not just in nursery or horticulture, and the principles are the same. So using the smart technology, as Andrew was saying, to monitor energy use or to monitor plant growth or to monitor the pigs' responses to water quality. This is where we're going into the future, where the focus on the individual systems is going to be far greater, but there's a lot of programs and a lot of projects out there that are actually looking at this smart technology. So it is something of the future, and I know that there is a national sustainability framework that's being presented or being developed that will look at how this sort of data feeds into the broader scheme of things. I think everybody's aware of the old term of food miles, and we're all very conscious of how our energy use is going up. So in the case of the microgrids, Andrew, the question I have for you is does this look like something that any producer could tap into, or is this going to be potentially a way of the future for farmers and nurseries and vegetable growers to share energy across farms?
Yeah, I think so. Like I think for your some of your growers in New South Wales and Victoria, it might already be possible where they might just be able to have a mechanism on their bills where they can net off generation on one bill against consumption on another bill on related accounts. So, but I think it's certainly it's something that struck us when we did the energy audits, and we went through and did measurement and verification on the audits, and found that farms tended to be exporting around 30% of their generation from their solar PV systems, and that's not a it's not that they've oversized them necessarily. It's just going back to what I said about it being hard to match up your consumption and generation, because you're seasonal, and so is the solar generation. So we thought, well, rather than sell that to the grid at 5 cents, and then if you've got a couple of pumps along the same power line, and buy it back at 35 or 40 cents down here, why not just be able to share it? And so we're working up here on trying to work with government and Ergon and Energex to try and work out ways that we can trial that in real time so that sort of thing can become a reality.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, interesting. Thanks for that, Andrew. I don't think there's any other questions at the moment. No, it doesn't appear to be any questions that have come through, but that was really good to see how agriculture and horticulture are both headed down the same path with this so-called smart technology, and there's dashboards. And to people out there who are interested in looking at this sort of technology, there are a number of service providers who are moving towards providing the service of hosting that data and having dashboards where you can use the data in real time, access the data in real time via the cloud. Now, the one thing I also would like to point out on that point is the more sensors you have, the more data that you upload through the system, that has to be stored somewhere. That can get quite expensive if you're uploading every minute and you're uploading lots and lots of data. So again, like I said before about choosing the sensor that's right for your system, by all means, investigate this sort of technology, but be aware that the more data you upload and have to store, then there can be a higher cost to that as well. So that's something you just need to think about. Okay, so in the last say 10 or 15 minutes, I thought we would maybe talk about a couple of things, such as there was a question earlier on about. I'm just going to share my screen here for a second, because there was a question earlier on about weight scales being used to monitor plant water use. And I did actually manage to find, I'm just going to put this up now, a graph that shows how the soil moisture sensors relate to weight scales. So this one that you can see here, the purple line is the soil moisture on Wayne's property. It's an average of the two soil moisture sensors in one of those containers, and the yellow line is the weight scale data. So you can see that with every blip, so every increase here is an irrigation, and so the irrigation being applied is showing up in the soil moisture as well as the weight scales, and then you get this diurnal effect where it stops transpiring and then it starts transpiring, stops, and that's a day. So that's one day, one night sort of thing, or vice versa, one day, one night, and it is paralleled in the weight data as well. So in the case of growing seedlings or plug trays or anything like that, you can relate the weight of the plants or trays to the soil or the water use by the plants. It's something that requires just a little bit more understanding of what the water holding capacity of your growing media is. But the other added benefit of using a weight scale is not only will it show you this daily water use, but over time it will show you the growth rate in the plants. So if you're specifically targeting a vegetative growth of X, then you can use the weight scale to do that, where soil moisture sensors won't indicate what the plant growth is. That's where the dendrometer comes in. Sorry about that. So this is what I was saying before about the soil moisture sensors. So the orange line is the soil moisture, and the blue line is the EC, or electrical conductivity. Okay, some people are saying now they can see the data. So when Wayne fertigates, you can see this increase in not only the soil moisture, but in the EC, because he fertigates. And that'll occur every time he fertigates. But in this case here, where we've got the EC has increased and then dropped, but the soil moisture has increased, this is indicating that it's either what Wayne calls a free irrigation, so it's either just plain water or it's a rain event. And I would be more inclined to say it's a rain event, because we can see the soil moisture has increased while the EC, or the nutrients, are being flushed out past that sensor. And then down the bottom here, you can see the same in the weight in relation to the irrigations and the rain event, and then a little increase afterwards. So this, to me, where we've got both an increase in the soil moisture and an increase in the EC, is suggesting that Wayne did a fertigation there just to try and bring nutrients up a little bit further. Okay, so this is the interpretation. So that was a very brief overview of some of the data that you'll see from both the soil moisture and the weight scales. And this one here, if you want a little bit more detail on this, this is two soil moisture sensors, one at 15 centimetre depth and one at 25 centimetre depth. And the columns up here are rain events. So this is actually showing us every time Wayne fertigates, and then when there's a rain event, you can see that the soil moisture goes up and the EC drops. So in this case here, where this line at the top here is showing us that the container capacity for water holding has absolutely reached saturation, and the soil moisture is extremely high, but all the nutrients are being flushed out. So that was basically just a very brief overview of how this data is being used. I'm going to stop sharing now and basically just wrap up. So if nobody has any further questions, then I will actually like to just simply thank. In fact, I'm going to put my slide up. Another slide. I just wish to thank Wayne and the boys from AHR, Henry and Liam, as well as Alan from Hitachi, for presenting today, and for all the work they've done during the course of the program. If I can find the right screen, I will share the screen. Here we go. So thank you all for your input into today and over the period. Out of this project, there is this Smart Farming Technology Guide for Horticulture that has been produced. It's a basic little guide to introduce people to smart farming, and kind of explains how to use the sensors and how to install them. And that is available both on the AHR website as well as the apps program that Celeste talked about earlier on. You can also go to the Green Life Industries Australia website for any further information. Also, there's the resource Managing Water in Plant Nurseries. This is basically the collation of 25 years worth of research into nursery irrigation and production systems. So it covers off on everything to do with dam design, irrigation, layouts, the whole works, and other production systems. And then, as Celeste also said, on that Australian Plant Standards website, there is the technical information library, which actually has all sorts of articles, webinar recordings, training videos to do with nursery production. And I would certainly suggest anybody who's interested in looking into more resources and information to have a look in that website. That's pretty much it for the day. I appreciate everybody who has stayed with us to the end. And I thank you all, and I hope you all have a good day. Thank you all, and I will sign off now. Have a good day.
Thanks, David. It's great. See you, everyone.
Thanks.